joining us today on Envision. I'm Deanne Conrad here with Dr. Brian Maher, our superintendent. One of the key components to successful completion of school is actually being in school. And attendance is something we've been focusing on in our strategic plan. Every building has a focus on attendance. How are we doing, and what are our steps for the future?
Yeah, well, such a good question. How are we doing? You know, we've put a lot of energy into improving attendance, and we're not seeing the fruit of our labor yet. But it's such an important issue. We're not going to give up on it either. We're going to keep innovating and keep iterating and trying to get better and better at how we approach the whole topic of attendance, and really dissect it and tear it apart and see where are the positive pieces that we can look at and try to fertilize those areas and make them grow into other areas of our school district. So, it depends on what you look at and how you look at it in terms of answering the question of how are we doing. Sure.
Numbers probably don't tell the entire story. You said you've done some dissecting to understand the numbers a little better.
Yeah, it's very complex, and you also have 24,000 students. So whenever you were trying to move the needle on attendance or on reading achievement or on math achievement, it's a hard move.
Slow move.
But it's also critical, because when you look at the leading indicators of success later on in school life or later on in work life, attendance, reading achievement, math achievement, those are critical leading indicators for success later. So they're worth our time, attention, and utilization of our resources. So we'll keep working at those.
Right, and when you're looking at the numbers, you talk a little bit about how the mobility plays in and factors in, and we just have a percentage of our population that is very mobile.
Yeah, we looked at our attendance in general, and we see some bright spots. You know, we've added a way to communicate with the home very directly in Kinvo, and that is proving to be a really nice utilization of our resources. One of the things we look at when we look at our data too is when we look at our attendance and we overlay the mobility rate of our student population with attendance, we see a real inverse relationship. As mobility increases, attendance decreases. So when we have kids who are moving 2 and 3 and 4 and more times in a school year, sometimes school or attending school isn't on the top of their priority list or their family's priority list. So we have a whole dynamic there to work on as a school district, but also as a community and as a society. Right. And we need to figure out how can we make sure that school attendance and the benefits of school attendance are still high on the list for those families and for those students.
Right, so making sure, as you said, it's a community effort, because you know, I suppose we're talking affordable housing in there and just a variety of options, services, and things like that some families rely upon, that it is really not just, oh, I'm not going to take my child to school today. It might be lack of transportation or, you know, gas money or whatever the case is. And so
other social factors, other personal factors, and so it's a fairly simple dynamic to look at the mobility rate, overlay it with attendance, and come up with that inverse relationship. The more complex issue is to figure out how do we address those folks who that mobility rate are really impacting. If we took those kids who moved multiple times in a year out of our attendance rate, our attendance would skyrocket. But that's an artificial manipulation of the numbers. So we want to figure.
They're ours.
And
they are our kids.
They are all our kids. They are why we do what we do as a public school. And so we take that responsibility seriously. So how do we help those families that necessarily are mobile? And how do we help them see school as important? And how do we make coming to school daily be top on their list of priorities?
Right. Very good. Well, the work continues on attendance. I think it's one of those things that you never reach your highest mark. You're always going to be striving for something better, and so we'll continue to do that and continue to explore ways that we can encourage families to make attendance a priority. If you're out there watching, please know that your child is wanted in school, and we look forward to seeing their faces every single day. Thanks for joining us today on Envision.